everyone, it's Miss Ellis back to read more Magic Tree House, Midnight on the Moon. So before we start, I pulled up a photo on my phone to show you, since I'm recording this on my computer, of Neil Armstrong on the moon in 1969. So that's about 50 years ago, yeah, a little over 50 years ago, that the first people landed on the moon. And they're going to talk about it in this chapter, which is why I'm telling you. And here's a picture of him, Neil Armstrong, with the American flag that he put on the moon. Now, I don't know if you guys remember this, but when we had the planetarium come, they told us an interesting fact, which is that everyone always thinks Neil Armstrong was the first person to walk on the moon. But actually, it was the other astronaut, Buzz Aldrin, who was the first one to walk on the moon, because he got off, walked on the moon, and held the camera and took the picture of Neil Armstrong taking the steps on the moon and putting the flag in. So Buzz Aldrin had to be off the ship first and take those first few steps, and then Neil Armstrong is in the picture. So when you see those pictures, he's the one with the flag, but Buzz Aldrin was taking the photo. So just an interesting thing from history, and that's real. That's all stuff that happened. Magic Tree House, as we know, is a fiction book. It's not true, but it has information in it that is real. So that is real. So just wanted to give you guys some background before we start chapter 5, which is called Hang On. Annie drove the moon buggy over bumps and hollows. It bucked like a bronco. And a bronco, just so you all know, is a horse. I'm going through there. She pointed to an opening between two mountains. Jack held on to the dashboard. The buggy bumped toward the opening and shot through. On the other side, the ground was even rockier. Look for the fourth M thing, Annie said, bouncing up and down. Jack groaned. Looking for anything on this wild ride was impossible. Slow down, he said. How? Try pressing the brake pedal on the floor slowly. Annie pressed on the brake. The buggy slowed down. Jack sighed with relief. The ride was still bumpy, but at least now he could take a good look at the moon. He had never been to such a colorless, barren place. There was no green, no blue, no red. No water, no trees, no clouds. Only giant gray rocks and craters and an American flag. So there they are in the buggy, and they're seeing the American flag. And that's the one that the first astronauts put on the moon. And that over there, I think, is Earth in the background. Oh man, said Jack. That's from the first astronauts who landed on the moon. And look, a telescope, said Annie. She drove near the flag and telescope. Then she put her foot on the brake until the buggy stopped. She pressed a button that said off. Then she and Jack hopped out. They took slow, giant steps to the site of the first moon landing. Beside the flag was a sign. Annie read it aloud. Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon. July 1969. We came in peace for all mankind. That's a good message, said Jack. He handed the moon book to Annie. Then he took out his notebook and pencil to copy the sign. Let's leave our own message, said Annie. What should we say, said Jack. The same thing, said Annie. But say we are the first kids. Jack turned to a new page in his notebook. In big letters, he wrote their message. "Now we have to sign it," said Annie. Jack signed his name. Then he passed the notebook and pencil to Annie. She signed her name and passed the notebook back. Jack tore out the piece of paper. He put it by the flag. "Today, the first kids from the planet Earth came to the moon. We came in peace for all children. Jack and Annie." And there's a picture of the note. No wind would blow the message away. No rain would ever fall on it. It would be there forever, unless someone moved it. Thinking of forever made Jack feel dizzy. He shook his head to clear his thoughts. Then he remembered the time. Had 2 hours passed yet? Do you guys remember what would happen in 2 hours? They're going to run out of air. Uh-oh. "I wish I had a watch," he said, standing up. "We might be running out of time." "Oh, wow, a moon man," said Annie. "What?" Jack turned to look at her. She was staring through the telescope. Jack walked over to the telescope too. Annie stepped aside so he could look. Jack gasped. In the distance, something was flying above the ground. It looked like a giant man in a spacesuit. That's a good photo there. Ooh, and that's the end of chapter 5. I think that the author, Mary Pope Osborne, really likes to make things exciting right at the end of the chapter. That's actually called a cliffhanger, because it feels like you're just hanging on the cliff and you want to just figure out what's going to happen next. And it makes you want to read chapter 6. I'm going to read chapter 6 next week. Right now, though, you can make some predictions of what you think that moon man in the spacesuit might be there for. Do you think he's there to help them? I hope so. I'll see you next week to read chapter 6. Bye.